Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday, May 16th, 5:26 a.m. Central Time. We've got July corn futures down 2 3/4 at 589 3/4. July soybeans down 4 at 1396 3/4. July Chicago wheat down 3.5 at 657 1/4. July Kansas City wheat down 4.5 at 893 3/4. July spring wheat down 1 3/4 at 871.5. A little bit easier this morning after a rally on Monday. Mackenzie, we've got, I guess you could call this maybe some good demand news. I'd love to start off with some good news this morning.
Yeah, something positive for a change.
Yes.
The world's largest ethanol jet fuel plant is slated to open in 2025. Honeywell International Incorporated and Summit Agricultural Group are partnering to build the world's biggest ethanol-based aviation fuel plant. The facility is projected to cost $1 billion and will open here in 2025. It will be located on the U.S. Gulf Coast, which will allow for the use of a variety of ethanol feedstocks from different locations. Honeywell's technology will be used to transform ethanol into sustainable aviation fuel. Iowa-based Summit is already highly involved in the ethanol industry. The company founded the largest corn-based ethanol platform in Brazil, and they are also highly involved with ethanol and biofuel here in the U.S.
Mackenzie, do you drive an electric vehicle?
I sure don't.
I don't either, but we do have a looming demand problem here when it comes to corn. This is the demand breakdown that USDA gives us here for this new crop balance sheet. 37% of corn grown in the United States is going to be turned into ethanol next year. 39% is feed and residual, 15% exports, and then the remainder is food, seed, other industrial usage. We've seen these auto companies and the government talk about this idea that, by 2030, half of all U.S. auto sales are going to be electric, right? So it leaves a hole in the demand base, and this sustainable aviation fuel is what will fill that hole the way that it looks. Bloomberg did a really nice job with this article. Here's another quote that I wanted to read here. The global aviation market demands more than 100 billion gallons of jet fuel annually, with Summit estimating that figure will double in the next 20 years. Meanwhile, airlines across the globe are coming under increasing pressure to decrease their carbon emissions. The Biden administration has announced a goal for SAF to meet 100% of aviation fuel demand by 2050. Annual production in the U.S. was only 15 million gallons in 2022. So you're talking some tremendous numbers. This is not a story that's going to make the corn market rally today or tomorrow or next week. But big picture, this is something that's absolutely needed, because without this, that demand for ethanol may just kind of grind to a halt eventually if this electric vehicle thing is real. And it appears to be real to me. I mean, the governments, the private companies, everybody's pushing for this thing. So it appears to be the real deal. Absolutely.
The National Oilseed Processors Association, also known as NOPA, released April crush data yesterday. NOPA members crushed 173.2 million bushels of soybeans last month. The April soybean crush was down 6.8% compared to March, but up 2% compared to the same month last year. Despite the crush pace declining in April and falling short of the average trade estimate, processors still recorded their largest April crush on record. Crush margins have declined, but many plants continue to clear approximately $1 per bushel. And of course, NOPA members account for 95% of all soybeans processed here in the U.S.
If you look at seasonal crush charts, it's actually pretty normal to see a weaker April after a strong March. So we missed the mark a little bit. But you know what, guys? If we have a problem when it comes to soybean demand, it's not crush. This is going to continue to be really good as this U.S. crush expansion continues. If we have a demand problem, it's exports, with Brazil growing these massive crops, the Chinese economy in question. That's our problem when it comes to soybeans. And when it comes to the breakdown of soybean demand, soybeans grown in the U.S., where do they go? Historically, it's been like half crush and half exports, and you're going to see that relationship change here, or that those percentages change. You're going to see a lot more domestic crush, less exports in the future, the way that it looks, I think.
If you guys are not already checking out our premium content, you sure need to do so. Joe, tell me about the video you put out yesterday.
All right, so USDA's new crop corn balance sheet appears to be almost impossibly bearish. I did kind of a balance sheet breakdown, fiddled with the numbers. What if we have reduced production? What if we have reduced acres? What does that mean for demand? I talked about how some of these USDA demand numbers are kind of lofty. We did the soybean balance sheet too, which is a lot more sensitive in my opinion. Also had a free download available where you guys can fiddle with the balance sheets yourself. That was in the newsletter this morning. If you guys want to see the premium stuff, go to standardgrain.com. You can sign up this morning. I'll send you over all this stuff. This is a $50 per month subscription. You can cancel it anytime, no other fee, no other obligation. Nobody will try to sell you anything else. You can sign up in about 1 minute on your phone or computer with your credit card. Check it out this morning, guys.
The Kansas Wheat Tour begins today. The Kansas Wheat Commission will tour fields over the next few days and report its findings daily. Some real-time information will likely be available on social media. One representative from the commission said, I think unfortunately it's going to be a very small Kansas wheat crop. USDA projects the number at 191 million bushels. We'll see if the wheat tour agrees with that, but it's probably going to be the smallest wheat crop in Kansas since 1963. The pre-tour meeting in Manhattan had a record turnout last night.
All right, so I don't know how much additional fuel this short crop story can provide the wheat market. Kansas City wheat futures from their recent low to I think just yesterday's high, that was a rally of like $1.75 per bushel, which is a really, really substantial rally. And I know that when you look at the wheat market, so last year we rallied to $12, $13, right? $9 doesn't really seem like that high of a price, but if you take those prices from the invasion era and you throw them out, which is probably what you should do in regard to marketing, $9 is not a bad price. They're gonna see a lot of acres that'll be abandoned. They're not gonna see anything good. They're not gonna tell you anything good about the crop. It's just what do they tell you that's different than what USDA told you, I guess. So we'll talk about this here the next couple days. I feel like a lot of this has been discounted given this big rally. But you know what? We did have a breakout above some old highs in that July Kansas City wheat contract yesterday. So I'm not going to say that the rally is over necessarily by any means.
USDA reported a flash sale of old crop U.S. soybean meal to Poland yesterday. U.S. exporters sold 100,000 metric tons of soybean meal to Poland for delivery during the current marketing year. This is the first flash sale of soybean meal this year. During the 21-22 marketing year, soybean meal exports totaled 12 million metric tons, a value of $6.16 billion.
There were some rumors last week that some Argentina meal business had been canceled and switched to the U.S. I can't help but wonder if maybe this is some of that. And I wouldn't be surprised to pick up some additional meal business here. I mean, Argentina is typically the world's biggest meal exporter, and they, of course, had a disaster of a crop this year, have a disaster of a crop. So if we pick up some additional business, that would be great and would not be shocking to me, I don't think.
The Black Sea grain deal remains in limbo. Russia made a few comments this morning indicating that communications are ongoing and that questions still remain. The Kremlin said that Russia has not decided whether or not the deal will be renewed. The current deal is set to expire here on Thursday.
I think this is also part of the reason that the wheat market has rallied. I think it has more personally to do with those USDA production estimates. The market's a little bit concerned about this, and this is nothing new from Russia this morning. They didn't tell us anything. This was just across the wires here before we started taping here early this morning, but no decision. I mean, they're kind of running out of time here, but I guess that the ball is in Russia's court. I mean, it's their decision to make because we know that Ukraine and the UN and the US and Turkey and everybody else wants to see this thing continued. So it's up to Russia now, and I guess we'll see what happens the next day or two.
U.S. corn planting is ahead of schedule. The crop was 65% planted nationally through Sunday versus 59% on average. States that have planted 80% of the crop or more include Iowa, Illinois, Missouri, Kentucky, North Carolina, and Texas. The crop is 30% emerged nationally versus 25% on average.
Of your major corn growing states, there are not really very many that are behind average. North Dakota would be the big one that sticks out. Only 5% of the North Dakota corn crop planted versus 26 on average. Minnesota's ahead of schedule. Wisconsin is behind, 33% planted versus 45 average. Michigan is behind, 31% versus 37 on average. Ohio is behind. They've been kind of wet, 26% done versus 34 on average. But Indiana's ahead of schedule. Illinois is way ahead of schedule. Iowa's ahead of schedule. schedule. Nebraska is ahead of schedule. South Dakota is ahead of schedule. So you've got kind of a mixed bag here. A lot of states way ahead of schedule, but a few states very much behind. What about soybean planting?
So, soybean planting pace is the second fastest of the last 10 years. Only 2021 was faster. The crop was 49% planted through Sunday versus 36% on average. States that are 30% planted or better include Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi. The crop is 20% emerged nationally versus 11% on average.
Illinois, I believe, is still your number one soybean producer. The Illinois bean crop, 38% planted versus just 18 on average. Iowa's really quick too, 19% done through Sunday versus 9 on average. Indiana way above schedule or ahead of schedule. So I think guys have had some luck with early planted beans the last few years, and they're kind of pushing this thing. So maybe we're just seeing a slight change in the dynamic here in terms of what gets planted and when. U.S. winter wheat conditions still bad, I assume.
Yeah, still pretty darn poor. The crop is rated 29% good to excellent, unchanged on the week. The poor to very poor rating dropped to 41% nationally from 44% the prior week. Extremely poor ratings in HRW wheat areas of the US Southern Plains continue to drag down the national average. The crop is 49% headed nationally versus 48% on average.
There has been some rain recently, so you saw that drop in the poor to very poor category. We went from 44 last week to 41, which is still terrible, but it's an improvement. So maybe some of these rains recently have helped. It's not going to totally salvage the crop by any means, but could attack on some bushels here and there. I suppose that's possible. Spring wheat planting is behind schedule, and I didn't even look at let's see, look at the maps here. So North Dakota is 20% planted. They should be 46. That's your problem. Minnesota is also really slow with spring wheat, 28% planted versus 54 on average. Corn shipments better.
Yeah, they improved last week. USDA reported that 1.2 million metric tons, so 46 million bushels of corn were inspected for export during the week ending May 11th. The print was up 20% on the week and up 11% versus the same week last year. Accumulated corn shipments for the current marketing year are down 33% versus the same time period last year. Soybean shipments increased 6% from the previous week, totaling 147,897 metric tons. Wheat shipments were reported at 242,269 metric tons, up 13% compared to the previous week.
Corn is still kind of your area of contention when it comes to exports. China actually took the most U.S. corn last week, and Mexico was number 2. So yeah, China did cancel some purchases, of course, but they're still taking shipments of U.S. corn. They didn't cancel everything. They canceled a decent chunk of what they had purchased, but certainly not everything. I guess the question now is, USDA reduced its export projection last week. Do we need to see further reductions, or can we see shipments and sales improve here during the remainder of the marketing year? I'm not too sure, but this is a better looking number. Cattle market was kind of mixed yesterday, looks like.
Somewhat, but feeder and live cattle futures did extend some gains from Monday, especially feeders. They closed an average of $1.34 higher, ranging anywhere from 67 cents all the way up to 207. Live cattle, they weren't quite as high, but they did close an average of 66 cents higher, except for 7 cents lower in the spot June contract. Choice box beef was down to 63 on Monday, ending the day at 301.98, and select was 3 cents higher, closing at 284.71.
All right, outside markets this morning, guys, fairly quiet. U.S. dollars off just a little bit. The S&P's off 4 points ahead of the cash open. The Dow's down 90. Bonds up a little bit. Gold's down $10. Crude oil is up 7 cents in the June WTI at 71.18. I think there was a couple headlines about the SPR being refilled, but like a really small amount yesterday. I don't think that means a whole lot. Maybe we'll hear some additional news here this week. Everybody have a great day today. We'll talk to you Wednesday.